Well, we've finally got to the end of this week's podcast on the power of humility, and we're on day 7. The humility as a way of life, living in reality. So welcome back to the power of humility. Today we come to the final episode in this journey together. And over the past days we have really reflected on humility in many forms. The humility to see ourselves clearly, the humility to admit when we do not know, and the humility to listen, the humility to handle success wisely, and the humility to learn from failure, and the humility to protect relationships rather than ego. But humility is more than a collection of individual behaviours. Humility is a way of life, a lifelong orientation towards truth, grace, wisdom and reality. Staying teachable, welcoming feedback, serving quietly and accepting limits and remaining grounded. And perhaps the most important, humility brings freedom. You no longer need constantly to prove your worth. You no longer need to win every comparison. And you no longer need to control your every outcome. You can simply contribute. The Bible consistently presents humility not as weakness, but as wisdom. The prophet Micah wrote this. He said, "What does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." Micah 6:8. Not occasionally, not only in moments of failure, but daily, steadily, faithfully. So humility is not merely an attitude, it becomes a posture towards life itself. And if I'm honest, much of human striving is driven by ego. The need to appear important, to be admired and to feel superior, and to avoid looking weak. These desires can quite quietly shape our decisions, our conversations, our relationships, and even our spirituality. And ego is exhausting. It constantly compares, competes, defends and performs. Humility offers another path, a quieter path, a freer path. The freedom to simply be who you are, to contribute without needing applause, to serve without needing recognition, to grow without pretending perfection. So humility aligns us with reality. And reality is where peace begins. See, humility allows us to accept truths that pride resists. And we have limits. We need help, and we do not know everything. And we will make mistakes. Other people matter as much as we do. See, these truths may initially feel really uncomfortable, but they are deeply liberating, because once we stop resisting reality, we stop exhausting ourselves trying to maintain illusions. And the illusion of perfection, the illusion of control, and the illusion of superiority. See, humility brings us back to solid ground. And Jesus is our model of humility. The ultimate example of the humility is Jesus' central figure of Christianity. Though he possessed authority, wisdom and power, he constantly chose service. The Apostle Paul writes this. He says, "In humility, value others above yourselves," Philippians 2:3. And speaking of Christ, he humbled himself, Philippians 2:8. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. He welcomed the overlooked. And he served rather than demanded to be served. In God's kingdom, greatness is expressed through humility. Humility keeps us teachable, but pride says, I already know, whereas humanity says there is more to learn. Pride also says resist feedback, but humility welcomes growth. Pride fears weakness, but humility understands that acknowledging weakness is part of becoming stronger. As the book of Proverbs teaches, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom, Proverbs 11:2. See, wisdom grows where humility is present. So one of the clearest signs of humility is quiet service. Doing good without needed recognition, helping without announcing it, and giving without demanding praise. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, it says in Matthew 6:3. So humility frees us from the need to turn every act into a performance. We can simply serve. Living humbly has become especially challenging in our modern world. Today's culture encourages constant comparison, public performance, instant opinions, personal branding, outrage as identity. We are often rewarded for visibility rather than wisdom, and for reaction rather than reflection, and for certainty rather than curiosity. Humility offers a healthier alternative. So let's pause before posting, let's listen before reacting, and let's give credit others publicly, and accept nuance. Allow your views to evolve. Not every thought needs immediate expression, but every disagreement requires a public battle. Sometimes wisdom is found in restraint. So what I meant by that, is not every disagreement requires a public battle. And sometimes wisdom is found in restraint, reflections before speaking or sharing. So before sharing something online or in a conversation, ask this: is it true? Is it helpful? And is it necessary? And is it, most of all important, is it kind? These questions create space between impulse and action. And in that space, humility can guide us. Take a moment to reflect on this entire week. What did you learn about yourselves? Where do you still cling to your ego? What situations trigger comparison and defensiveness? And how can we practice humility daily? And who benefits when we live this way? How would our relationships change if humility became our default posture? So sit quietly with these questions. Allow them to settle deeply. And today, perform one meaningful act of service without seeking recognition. See, help someone quietly, encourage someone privately, give generously, and serve without announcing it. Let the act remain between you and God. Notice the peace that comes when contribution matters more than attention. Humility does not make life smaller, it makes life lighter. So there is less pressure to impress, less fear of failure, and less need for comparison. Humility creates space for peace, gratitude, authenticity, compassion, and most importantly, wisdom. It allows us to live honestly, and honest living is deeply freeing. So Lord, teach us to walk humbly, teach us to be teachable, and keep us grounded. Free us from pride, comparison, and the need for recognition, and help us to serve quietly, to listen deeply, to love generously, and to use our gifts for the good of others. See, may humility shape our thoughts, our words, our relationships, and our life. Amen. So may you grow in clarity rather than self-importance, and may you become strong enough to admit mistakes, wise enough to keep learning, and grounded enough to use your gifts in service of others. That is the power of humility. Humility is the quiet strength that allows us to grow, love, and serve with wisdom. So thank you for joining me on this journey through the power of humility. Carry these reflections into your daily lives. Stay open, stay grounded, and keep growing.